and was part of an underground rap group called the JVC Force, which I'm told had a hit record. Two of his colleagues are here, joining him, one working with him musically, and the other in other ways.
Yes.
Right. Mr. Woodson has brought several copies of his book today, and if, after you hear the talk, you would like to know more about these incredible women that he is spotlighting in his book, you are welcome, of course, to purchase a copy, which he will autograph for you. And with that, present Mr. A.J. Woodson.
Thank you. Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Yes, indeed.
As you know, as she said, I'm AJ Woodson. I'm the editor-in-chief of Black newspaper, Black Westchester. We're celebrating our 10-year anniversary. So we started the paper to be the voice. There wasn't a black voice in media in Westchester, so we're trying to fill that void. So a lot of people always ask how we got started. So my first book, that's what it's about, Black Westchester, the origin story, tells you the whole story of how we got started. I was living in Georgia, and my mother had stage 4 cancer. So I came back to New York, and a partner of mine, David Jones, who I had a music company with, started getting more into activism, and he had this idea. And we started Black Westchester, and we're still here 10 years later. It's on. Yeah.
Just speak closer.
Yes, he can move it up and down, so there we go. So my second book that I'm here to talk about, Black Westchester Celebrates Black Women of Westchester. I wanted to do a book for Black History Month. We already document everybody who's achieved whatever when they achieved it. So I was gonna put all that together, and it sounds like the mic went out.
Yeah, well done.
Okay, it's not.
It's not an angle.
Hello. No, it's the mic. The mic went out.
No, the mic actually stopped.
The mic actually went out.
No, it was on.
Look on the bottom.
Is it charged? Maybe
It
it's.
might battery.
Yeah, I need to recognize it.
So anyway, I can speak loud.
Yeah, he can talk loud.
So we want to do a book on Black History book for Black History Month.
Sorry.
And as I was putting together all the stuff and I was documenting, I found it was harder to find information going backwards on Black women. The further I went back, the harder it was to find. So that made me dig and decided to dedicate a book to Black women. The first woman, of course, I dedicated to was my mother, who is the inspiration of this book. She always told me, give me my flowers while I'm alive. So that was kind of the thing, giving a lot of women their flowers. Actually, one of the presentations we did in Mount Vernon Public Library, all the women who showed up, I physically gave them a dozen roses as well. So I wanted to give them their flowers. But I wanted to celebrate, and I thought this would be something great that hopefully a lot of libraries are starting to carry, and kids can use when they Black History Month and Women's History Month when they have to do reports to look stuff up like that. So the first is broke up into 4 parts. The first part, I'm just going to read it right out of here. The first part celebrates a lot of the women we covered over the last 10 years that have made history, like Sean Patterson Howard, who's the first Black mayor, female mayor of Mount Vernon. Vivian McKenzie was the first Black female mayor of Peekskill. Marianne Carr, who's the first Black female town supervisor of Bedford. And Amara Andino, I always pronounce her name wrong, who's the first Afro-Latina mayor of Tuckahoe. Then he's the first Black woman and first woman to run a municipality of Westchester. I celebrate State Senator Andrew Stewart Cousins, who was the first to be the majority leader in the state of New York. And she forever destroyed, there was this expression, 3 men in a room. So it was the governor, the majority leader of the Senate, and the speaker and usually it's was 3 men. She forever broke that. It can never be called 3 men in the room. And now we got a female governor, so now it's 2 women in the room. We celebrated Nadine Hunt Robinson, who was the first African American woman to be elected to the White Plains Common Council. And a few years later, she was the first Black woman to be elected to serve as the council president. Lakeisha Collins Bellamy made history as the first African American and woman of color elected for the Yonkers City Council, and so on and so on. Karen Bess and Vera Shako made history as the first Black females elected to serve in Yonkers City Court. The same year, Judge Michelle Johnson made history as the first Muslim to serve as a judge in Mount Vernon. And we even celebrated Vanessa Gibson, who was the Bronx first female to be the Bronx Borough President, and Darcel Clark, who's the first female to be Bronx District Attorney. Even though they crossed the line, I live in Mount Vernon, so they're close to me. They each shattered glass ceilings. You know, so a lot of the women that I celebrate, they shattered glass ceilings. They were the first to do something that they hadn't been done before, and I thought that was very important. Part 2, I celebrated several women who paved the way. Starting with Dr. Olivia Hooker, who was the first African American woman in the U.S. Coast Guard. And more importantly, she was one of the last living survivors of the Tulsa massacre, the Tulsa riots. She was a young girl when it burned down. She went on to do a lot of great things. There's a daycare in Greenburgh named after her. Celebrated Alfreda Williams, first Greenburgh town clerk. Lois Braun is the one that got the center named after her. Who was first Greenburgh city councilwoman, on and on and on and on. And then part 3, I celebrated women who might not have necessarily been the first, but they were women of distinction that I thought needed to be celebrated either from Westchester or lived in Westchester. The first was Ruby Dee. And everybody knows her for her on the screen, everything she's done in entertainment and on Broadway, but I wanted to celebrate her for her years of activism. And one of the things I learned most about her, and inspires me, she walked with Martin Luther King. Her and her husband walked with Malcolm X. Her husband actually did the eulogy for Malcolm X's funeral. They've been arrested for several protests in the civil rights movement, and her husband passed, and she could have sat on her laurels of what she had done and never done anything else. But in her last years, we had an incident in White Plains in 2011 where a Black man, Kenneth Chamberlain, was killed by the White Plains Police Department. His only crime was he fell asleep and set off his medical alert, and the cops came for a welfare check, and 90 minutes later they ended up killing him. She was the first civil rights leader to demand and be justice, and she stood up for him, and she inspired Kenneth Chamberlain, who's a friend of mine, to never give up the fight. And she died a couple of years later. And what I learned from that, like I said, she could have rested on her laurels, but as much as she had done, there's always some more to do. So that was one of the lessons I got from her, and I really wanted to celebrate her as the activist, because I don't see enough of that. Spotlights on Westchester County Press, publisher Sandra Blackwell, and several others. Part 4, I actually have a timeline in history of Black women in Westchester. Going back to 1828, when Sojourner Truth made history as the first Black person, definitely Black woman, to sue a white man and win. I think it had something to do with the freedom of her son. Her son was in slavery. I think she sued and somehow she got his freedom. But she was the first one to ever do that. She lived in Briarcliff Manor. Then you had she lived in Briarcliff Manor. Then you had C.J. Walker, who where was she at? Irvington, yes, she had a big house there, and her history, and all these women who had either been through Westchester, who had done something. A lot of people don't know, after Malcolm X died, his wife, Betty Shabazz, and her kids moved to Mount Vernon. And 2 houses away was Nina Simone. So so they, so I celebrate both of them in the book, and several others. I really, like I said, I really wanted to do this. I call this book my Christmas song. And people go, what does that mean? So, every year for Christmas, you pull out that Nat King Cole or Jackson 5 or Mariah Carey Christmas song. You play it every year over and over. So hopefully every Black History Month and every Women's History Month, I get called to speak and I get to honor these women. And hopefully kids will start reading about them and learning. And I wanted to show, especially young Black girls, the greatness that is in, you read about people in history, but these people lived where you live. You know what I'm saying? These people did all these things. They dared to be different. They shattered glass ceilings. They did things that people said that they couldn't do, that nobody had done before them. And I wanted to celebrate all of them. And I said I wanted to give them their flowers. One of the people I was so happy that we did was Pearl Quarles. And she passed. But when the book came out, I did a book signing in Greenberg Library. And one of her people brought a book for her, took it to her. And they brought it to her, and she read it, and she took a picture and sent a message. So I got to give her flowers. Like, when she passed, everybody said all these great things about her at her funeral, but I got to give her flowers while she was alive, which is the theme of the book. So that's one of my most proudest moments, that she really appreciated when I wrote about her and that I honored her. Which is rare because in this time we're so politically divided. She was a Republican. And that's another thing with our history. It was so hard to dig this stuff up because both her and Lois Brown? Both of them were written as the first female county legislator. And I couldn't get the information from the county legislators. Like, I couldn't get the information so what happens is Pearl was actually first when she was appointed. And because she's Republican, sometimes they omit her from history. Lois was the first elected. So they both were first. You know what I'm saying? But sometimes Pearl's story doesn't get told. You know what I'm saying? So I wanted to, honor her. And I think, one of the things about our history in a time where they're, excuse the expression, whitewashing our history, they're trying to erase our history, anything that, they're trying to get rid of all of our history, take away all of our rights. They want to go back, when they say make America great, they want to go back to when just white people was running things. So none of us had rights. I think it's important to document this stuff because when our history is not told, excuse me real quick. When all of our history is not told, it robs our youth when they're growing up to understand each other. When Black history is not told, it doesn't just, not just dishonest Black people, but how can young white people respect the history of Black people if they don't even get taught that history? They learn that history started with slavery and that was it. You know what I mean? And then there's a certain implicit bias that, just comes with just growing up. Not really racism, but it's just, you don't know. You know what I mean? And, we have to learn each other's history. I'm talking a lot with Jewish and Palestinian history now. The LGBTQ history, the history of women. We can't move forward until we all understand each other's history, we all understand each other's plight. Then we can move forward, then we can work together. I like to say a lot of times, people come to these things, people come to meetings to be heard. Everybody wants to be heard, but no one wants to come to the table to hear. You know what I mean? So it's like, until we learn to come to the table to hear, I hear some people like, in Florida, they want to take away certain things from Black history because it made young white kids uncomfortable. You know, first off, school is not supposed to be comfortable. That's supposed to be an uncomfortable place to learn. But secondly, I use this for an example. When they used to show the stuff on the Holocaust every year, I would watch it. As a human, how can I not be uncomfortable watching that? But I would continue watching it so I can learn the history. Until we're comfortable being uncomfortable, you know what I'm saying? Like we won't be able to really move to this place that they say, you know, that this is supposed to be. So a lot of that is why I document the stuff that I do, and I pay tribute to the women. I want to special shout out to my daughter, Paula Sherelle Woodson, who did all of my book covers. So she did this. It was her idea to put the women in the W's. I just sent her pictures. She did the, she put the, that was all her idea. I had to take no credit for that. So, you know, and like I said, my mother inspired me a lot, and that made me want to write this book. There will be a need to be a part 2 immediately, because after the book published, Rochelle Mayer is the first Black female, and someone else just made history too. There was a couple other people that just made history after the book was already published, so I will add different volumes to it. At any point, if anybody has any questions, as you heard, so I started this thing as a rapper. As a rapper, when you're on stage and you say stuff, you get crowd participation. So I love crowd participation. So feel free to participate in the conversation. I never wanted to just be me. I want to, have a conversation. So any questions, even before the questions, or you got a comment, please just feel free to engage. Go right ahead.
So you're like, I'm hearing a lot, or I'm like taking away from this, like the need for more, like education, like from the beginning about like Black history. And do you know, like, do you have any idea what that would look like for the future for us? Like,
well,
how could we like?
That's a very good question. I'm still trying to talk into the mic. That's a very good question. Unfortunately,
we didn't fully hear your question.
Okay, well, say yes.
Sorry. Like, how can we fully incorporate more like education about Black history and like more comprehensively educate for equity within our school systems?
The fact that you're even asking the question, first off, is and let me sidebar. I wanted to give you ladies, I meant to start that, all kinds of props. When I was your age, I wasn't thinking about no politics. I wasn't thinking about all the things that y'all have just done. I was nowhere there. I wasn't paying attention to the fact that y'all have done all those things. You went to the Senate, you've engaged. I wish more of our youth would do that, because, that saying, you're all the future. You know what I'm saying? So, and I want to congratulate this organization, because one of the things I see is a lot of people want to hold on to everything, and they want to stay in power, and they don't bring in the youth and mentor them and bring them up so they can take over later. So I want to compliment the whole organization on that, because that's beautiful. But I want to give y'all props. I wish y'all your best. Don't give up. Y'all are at a great age where anything is possible. Try everything. Literally, like everything, and don't be afraid to fail. There's a great book y'all should read. It's called Failing Forward,
I've read
by John Passmore, I believe that's his name. But Failing Forward, you have to be. They said Thomas Edison failed 10,000 times in creating the light bulb. And there's a quote that they asked him, so you failed 10. He said, no, I didn't fail 10,000 times. I found 10,000 ways it didn't work. And he continued on. So, it's in the failing that you grow. So feel free, try things, and don't be afraid to fail. So that's all I want to say to y'all. I want to give y'all. But doing the work, being here at stuff like when someone like myself is speaking, doing the research. And then when you do get this, take it back to your circles and share it. with people in your circle. So I don't know if I fully answered your question, though. But
No,
yeah.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, it's a really good answer.
I have another question. So how far back in history did you go?
1828.
Oh wow, why did you decide to stop there?
Well, that's as far as I found. Like as far as Black was, that was the oldest thing I found that I could find in the time frame that I had to do the book of something a Black woman did that lived in Westchester. I don't know if she lived in Westchester at the time, but she lived in Westchester afterwards or before. So
Oh, right.
I celebrate her because she was a woman of Westchester at some point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it was like I said, once I got past the 80s, and then went to the 70s, and then especially the 60s, it was harder to find women to celebrate. I actually had to go through like 218 sources. I have the first Black reporter from News 12. News 12 in their archives could not tell me what year she was. You know what I mean? Like News 12 didn't have this information.
What was your process? You couldn't find. You sort of got to.
I picked a lot of people's brains. Some towns have historians. One of the people in here, Joyce Cole, she's the first Black historian of Austin. So I did that. I went to libraries. My brother, Dr. Bob, I pick his brain all the time when I'm writing. He's a good researcher. He's always points me in the right directions and, go here, check here. That's what he does. He researches stuff. Way deeper than I do. That's what he loves to do. I don't love to do it, but he loves to do research. Like if he could spend every day in the library just researching, that's what he would do. Yeah, but I read everything. I went to all the organizations' websites, all the towns and villages, asked them, all police departments. Again, police departments, White Plains Police Department couldn't give me the dates of the first Black female lieutenant or sergeant or whatever. I had to end up getting it from her husband. They couldn't give it to me. New Rochelle Police Department, I had trouble getting in. The oldest, the first Black female officer, Yonkers, there's a street named after her. Yes, there's a street named after her. So it was just a matter of just going through all these sources and continuing, and then talking. There's a lot of people, there's another thing, don't allow the elders in your life to leave without picking their brains. The mistake that a lot of people in my generation did, we let our elders die with all that knowledge, and then we had to start from scratch. Pick their brains now. And a lot of them love to talk about what they did and what they know. They love to talk about that stuff, so do as much of that as possible. And help them document, and even in your family, your genealogy of your family, you probably have an elder in your family that got this stuff in the attic somewhere, and the rest of the people don't know it, and your generation don't know it. Try to document the stuff. Everybody, that's another thing you can do for your own history. And I got that from Joyce Cole, the Austin historian. Go through your grandparents, your great-grandparents that are still there. Go with them and get that information and start documenting, because we lose a lot of our history. And African traditions, before we were here, there was every village had they either call it a griot or a griot. Griot. Some people, that person's responsibility was to carry the oral tradition of that village and teach it to the young people. You know what I'm saying? Like that was their sole purpose. We lost some of that as Black people when we came here as slaves and we moved. So I'm hoping we get more back into that, telling our stories. And so that's what I'm trying to do with everything we do, document. We call Black Westchester, so I'm documenting Black life, Black. My third book, because we had the 50th anniversary of hip hop, is Celebrating Westchester Hip Hop. So, which my friend is holding up right there. Shout out to Andrew. Very supportive individual. Everybody needs an Andrew in their life. Somebody that holds you down and supports you and goes all your stuff. That's shout out to Andrew. So, are there any other questions, or I'll just keep talking? Go ahead.
You talked about Lois Brown. She's one of my.
Could you speak louder so we can hear?
Yes.
What was your question?
She asked about Lois Bronze.
So, 107. Lois Braun